Well, that was a pretty brutal cut off there, wasn't it? Huh, how about that? See, like I said, there's going to be some cuts and bruises. It cut me off right there at segment. I was trying to say one last word, and it cut me at Thanks. Thanks for that. Anyway, um, moving on. Let me go back to, I guess, the beginning of time. In the beginning, the earth was void and without light. No, in the beginning, when I was born premature, quite premature. In fact, I have been told I was so small I could fit in the palm of your hand. And I kept turning blue and uh, exhibiting severe signs of hypoxia as a little kid. And my parents kept bringing me in to doctor after doctor, and they could not figure out what the heck was going on. And this was about 1979 ish, I think. Until one day, someone had the brilliant idea of, hey, let's cut the dude open and let's see what's in there and what's messed up for ourselves. So they did. Yes, I am a proud member of the Zipper Club. You know, the folks that have the zipper stitches on the chest. Mine are very um, subdued, I guess is the word, uh, since I got them as a 1 year old, essentially. It's uh, it's been quite a while, but you can still faintly see that zipper. So yes, I'm a member of that group. Yay! Better not committing any crimes. That's an easy scar to recognize, right? And although, why would I commit a crime shirtless? Be weird. Anyway, I've gone off track. So they did that. They cut into me, and holy smokes, there was no right pulmonary artery they found. And so they decided to defenestrate me. No, no, not that bad. If it was in Roman times, I would have tossed into the Tiber. But nowadays, they're a little bit nicer. They just defenestrate you. Uh, if you don't know what that is, it means to throw someone or something from a window. Great word. I'm bringing the word back. Defenestrate. Yes. Anyway, no, they didn't do that either. I'm sorry. They couldn't graft an artery from another portion of my body because I was so small. Remember, I was a preemie, which is what they would normally do when they had to put in a shunt to replace that artery, that missing pulmonary artery. But since they couldn't graft from anywhere else on my body, they decided just to use stuff they had in the lab that and created this sort of Kevlar like tube to attach the two ends and open it up for it to emulate a right pulmonary artery. They literally just made it up as they went along. And it worked. Yay. It is still there today as I talk. That very same artificial shunt is actually still with me, inside me. And it's actually still working according to my last heart cath, which, granted, was like 10 years ago. But at least over that time, I've no reason to believe why it's changed. But at that time, it was still working. Not great, but it was still working. It was heavily calcified, um, really diminished and what it could uh, pass through the artery, and they couldn't balloon it or anything because it was just so calcified. It just seemed like if they touched it, it would just break off or whatever. It was so brittle they didn't even want to try to mess with it. So that's really the beginning of my saga. Now I grew up pretty much as a normal kid. I didn't do sports. I wasn't athletic. Gee, I wonder why. Um, I always hated PE. I don't know who didn't, but I don't know. I'm sure some people are saying, "Hey, I love PE," but I despised it because I had this heart condition, but I had to take PE according to the school district. So, um, it got worse as I got older. Towards my 30s, it was some diminished walking. I couldn't walk very fast, and I was in and out of the hospital a lot with hypoxia and diminished um, uh, flow through my artificial shunt. But I've gone a little ahead of myself there. You see, I also uh, developed, as part of this issue, very severe pulmonary hypertension. And that's not hypertension. Well, okay, it's not exactly the same as hypertension, as you might understand it. Pulmonary hypertension is a little different animal. If you want to learn more, Google it. I'm not going to get into it here. But I had a very severe case of extremely high pressures in my heart and lungs because the stress was so high on my heart to pump blood to the various parts of my body with this dinky little 1 year old artery. 1 year, like belonging to a 1 year old. But had been in there for 15 years by then, or whatever, insert year here. So, pretty much since I was a little kid, I would say, I knew to say and tell people, I have pulmonary hypertension. I didn't know what that meant, but I would tell people that. So that was the very first diagnosis. And then it became severe pulmonary hypertension. Oh, cool. That then led into heart failure. And then that led into a number of really traumatic events, which landed me pretty much out of my career and on disability and in hospice care, which, as you might guess, isn't super duper fun. Anyway, they did discuss possible cardiac surgery to improve it, but by the time I got around to talk about that, I was in my 30s or so. And by then, the pressure was so severe in my chest, they were terrified that the mortality rate of any surgical intervention is too darn high, and the surgical group can't speak, unanimously voted to reject surgery. And I even had that shopped around from my main hospital where I grew up to Stanford Hospital, and I think they ran it by Mayo Clinic, and all of them said, nope, 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 too high of a mortality risk. So I guess that's one of those things that I could or would have, should have done when I was in my teen years and had the ability to go through that. But I did not. I was too focused on ignoring the problem and being a kid. That's really what got me through life. Just sheer grit. As one doctor I actually strangely don't like. I don't know why I'm quoting her. Um, she described it as sheer grit that got me through it. But as I've said before and quoted before, Darwin himself said it is not the strongest of the species that survive, but the most adaptable to change. So, my body reacted in the oddest way. It started to grow peripheral circular blood vessels from there was a lack of circulation. So, for example, in the area where there was a lack of circulation from my right pulmonary artery, it started to make its own concentric peripheral blood vessels. I've seen scans of it, and it's spooky. And it looks like a spider's nest of veins and capillaries going everywhere, like totally abnormal. In addition to that, I've got the same thing in both my legs. Why is that, you might ask? Turns out, I found out later that I have protein C deficiency. Is that right? Now I'm gonna have to Google it and make sure I got that right. That's pathetic. I can't even remember my own crap. I don't know if that's right. Oh, for God's sakes, just go to Google. Alrighty then. Protein. It must be. Yeah, I was right. Woo-hoo. It's always going to be right. Okay. Protein C deficiency, which was something that was only discovered much later in my lifetime. Only my current cardiologist, who have had for now about 20 plus years, actually, half my life. Um, in other words, I really like him. Uh, he he's the one that introduced me to the term and discovered it. The first half of my life, no one ever said that. So they didn't say it because they didn't know about it. And what this deficiency does is it causes abnormal clotting in the blood vessels to where you can get a clot and it can actually get so bad it could completely occlude an artery. And that could cause either a traumatic event or, I guess, a lot of different things that could be traumatic: stroke, embolism, take your pick. But what my body did is it reabsorbed the blood vessels affected and again grew those concentric peripheral vessels to compensate for the blood flow loss. So it's a good theory that as a as a baby in the womb, I may have very well had a right pulmonary artery. By the time I was born, because of this protein C deficiency, it got occluded and absorbed by the body. Now, in my legs, I have no working femoral arteries as well. One is completely missing from the leg altogether, doesn't even exist. The other one is still somewhat there, but it's completely occluded and slowly being reabsorbed by the body. And in both cases, you get again these peripheral concentric circles of these crazy blood vessels growing to compensate for the loss of the blood flow. So my body adapted to these severe issues, to put it mildly. And that also makes me a very poor candidate for surgery because if they go in and they cut one little blood vessel, maybe nothing happens. Or maybe I immediately go into cardiac arrest. They have no idea. Because at this point, my anatomy is completely unique. There is no reference to this anywhere in the universe. I'm writing the book as we go. And while they're able to describe the blood flow, when I last saw my cardiologist, which was in May, late May, in his summary, he said he also tolerates these severe pressures in his chest. And we have no idea how. It just literally said in his report, we don't know how his body has adapted to that level of pressure. So it's just a medical mystery. So that's just the start. I know, right? Um, when you actually look at my list of diagnoses, it's 2 whole pages listed out. I kid you not. It's just like dozens of them typed out on small print. 2 pages of diagnoses. I've heard doctors say I've never seen the list of diagnoses like this in my life. You win. I don't think that's something I want to win, though. Anyway, moving on. So, that's more or less my major issue. And that then, again, as I said, moved on to heart failure. And now I am in end stage heart failure and am going to die from that, most likely. I also have had a left traumatic hip replacement. Only in 2015, I was barely over 30. It was just a freak accident at home. I had apparently a pulmonary embolism, which I did not know, actually. I had an event, and I don't really want to get into the details. It was one of those really scary events. I think I've mentioned it before. I'll try to I don't want to summarize it. I don't want to bore people. But, okay, really quick. This event I was working from home on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Normal day, everything was perfectly normal. It was a Friday before a 3-day weekend, so I decided to work from home. And like I said, it's like 3 p.m. Whole day went by, no issues. I had pho for lunch. I was looking forward to the weekend, playing with my dog. Nothing new. Then I suddenly felt short of breath, like severely short of breath. And I had an oxygen concentrator at the time that I only used at night. So I popped that on and cranked that sucker up to see if that helped, and that didn't help at all. And I checked my pulse ox on room air, and it was fine. So then I tried, well, just lay down on the bed, try to relax, just chill. And no, I just had this shortness of breath, and then I had an overwhelming feeling of impending doom. And I can't describe it, but it's something that I don't think I'd wish on anyone. Heart attack survivors often describe this feeling of impending doom. It is something so far back in our human um, human development. It's so far in the recesses of our mind that we can't truly even explain it, but it is a sign from the body saying, you're gonna die. Like now. So I did what anyone else would do. I went to the theater. I'm kidding. I did not. I called 911. And needless to say, they started to immediately send paramedics. So I called my ex, 'cause I'm divorced, to pick up the dog. So the dog's taken care of over the weekend. And while I'm sitting there, I noticed my chair's all wet. And I thought, what the heck? Did the dog pee the chair? Stupid dog. And I'm still on the phone with the 911 operators waiting for paramedics. I'm like, wait a minute. My jeans are wet. He didn't do it. I just peed myself. And I had no sensation whatsoever. I didn't feel any need to pee. I felt no urgency. I didn't even feel the peeing happen. I didn't even feel myself urinate. It was just the body was shutting down. Um, I actually did change my jeans really quick to have some dignity for when the paramedics showed up. But they did. They put me in the cot, and immediately I started pointing right away at this piece of Tupperware on the kitchen counter, like vigorously pointing to it to one of the paramedics. They're like, "Whoa, oh," and he hands it to me really quick, and I just lose everything I've ever eaten, it seems like, in this Tupperware thing. I'm throwing up everything and peeing everything. My body was going through its throes of impending death. It was discharging everything. Everything was failing, and it was going through the, urine coming out, vomit coming out, poop coming out, where every orifice just goes bleh. Wonderful fact about what happens when you die. It's not good unless you just happen to go to the bathroom right before you went. And even then, you'd probably still get a little some. Anyway, I got to the hospital. In the hospital, they really didn't do anything. So I was just chilling there. And at one point, the nurse was just writing her stuff on the whiteboard. And My cardiologist walked in on a surprise visit. I said, "Hey, great to see you. I like the guy. He saved my life before. Yeah, he's always a great guy to see." So at first I was thrilled. "Hey, I didn't know you were here. Oh, that's awesome." And he says, "Yeah." And he sits down next to my bed and he looks at the nurse and says, "Can you give us a little bit of privacy, please?" And she goes, "Oh, sure," and leaves the room. And I'm thinking to myself, this cannot be good. And it wasn't. I, at the time, thought he said I had a right pulmonary failure. But that doesn't make a lot of sense in hindsight. So I always thought I might have misheard that. But I was kind of in freak out mode at this point. So I'm not the best person to ask, right? But he said at that time, at the most, he thinks I've got maybe 3 years to live. And so I asked him point blank, "So you're saying I should start making final arrangements now?" And he nodded his head yes. And then he left. And there I just sat in that hospital room by myself. No visitors, no family, no friends. Just sitting in silence, just being told. Well, when I looked at my report on my medical history, this last May, it makes much more sense. It wasn't a right pulmonary anything. What I had was a full on pulmonary embolism. And that really confuses me. I always thought that was 100% rate death. It killed George Patton, right? He survives the war, then he dies of pulmonary embolism after a car crash in Germany after the war. But I guess it's more like 99.9999% fatal. I don't know. So apparently I got very lucky. And he said that to me 8 years ago. So much for 3 years. He also said in the meeting, "I am done. I am done predicting when you're going to die. I have no idea. I'm not even going to try." So that was, I guess, a humbling thing for him. Um, but yeah, that's really it in a nutshell, I would say. Trying to think if there's any. I mean, that's the big stuff. I mean, I've had abdominal surgery before. I've had bone breaks from just being a dumb kid, or being a dumb adult, actually. Uh, and I've had other things, but they were all, I don't know, things that are not uncommon. So I'm not even gonna go over that. But I have broken both arms at least twice. I've broken my left wrist. I've broken my left femur and my left hip and have a full hip replacement, in fact, now, titanium in my left hip. And I've cracked a couple ribs and broken a couple fingers and cracked my head open a few times in my life. So, I have friends who have never broken anything. I'm like, how? Do you just sit in a padded room all the way? I mean, most of this was stuff as a kid. I was doing stupid stuff, you know? And I just don't know how you go through life not breaking anything. Here's me with apparently the body of a gladiator in no good sense. No, I'm not ripped. I just if I get dug up one day a million years from now from alien archaeologists are gonna say, wow, this guy must have been a soldier. He has so many history of injuries on him. Wow. I don't know. Anyway, but that's all of it in the nutshell. And that will lead me to the next point, which is basically where I'm at now and what I'm unfortunately faced with. Well, folks, moving along steadily with this summary, after that pretty traumatic event that I just described, what did I do? I went back to work the next Tuesday. It was a 3-day weekend. And what happened was at like 3:30. So it was like was never out of the office, basically. I like missed like 2 calls and a few emails. That's it. No big deal. So I just went back to work. I mean, what else am I supposed to do with that information? Is kind of where I was at. Well, that's when my body decided it was going to step in and kick my butt and tell me what to do about that situation. I just have a habit of learning things the hard way. That's just how I jive. So as time went on with work, I was performing very well, according to the business group I supported. Um, Trainings that I developed ended up cited in the local business journals, and they're pretty big. I live in a major metropolitan city. I'm not talking like middle. God, I have to censor myself. Middle nowhere town BFE. No, I live in a city of 3 million people. Okay, so it's a pretty big deal. So it got invented. Wow, got invited. Yes, I was reinvented. Uh, I got invited to speaking engagements, and every other week I was out of town for a customer or to appear in court. I worked in the law department supporting them. So, but I kept getting knocked to my butt with fluid overload where I can't breathe because of the heart failure, despite the diuretics, and getting tossed in the hospital for a few days or a few months, even, and then out. And I also, like I said, I broke my hip and went from wheelchair to walker to cane and basically had to learn to walk again. Literally. That was very traumatic. That was several months. I can't remember. I think I was like 3 months, 2, 3 months, something like that. So, needless to say, there were some people that were getting very tired of me not being available because I was off dying somewhere. So, I got a new supervisor who I knew exactly what her role was, that she was going to be the hatchet lady because that was her history in this company. I saw it before me, and I saw no other reason for me to move under her. And she said, we're hiring another position to help us in the group you're in, which is asinine. I knew immediately they're hiring my replacement before they get rid of me. So I decided, after pondering, do I roadblock them? Do I fight them on this? Or do I do something like call a friend of mine, someone I know who would be able to do this job, is available to do this job, and would do it really well, and at least help someone I know? I went with the second option. And I still wonder if I made the right choice because I was exactly right. As soon as my ran out when I was in the hospital facing a sepsis infection, I was near death. I just, I mean, it was bad. My parents came up to see me, and I didn't invite them. The hospital did, I think, or maybe not. I don't remember how it all worked out. It's so foggy. I was in and out of consciousness. It was so bad, like 106 fevers, and those are 50-50 death rates. They're not something to mess with. I was in septic shock. And for being in septic shock, they decided to eliminate my position. Oh my God. So I was right. I was hiring my replacement. But what was weird is I was still employed because I was on disability. So I let that go on for a number of years until I couldn't anymore, where they said, well, after someone's on disability for 2 years straight, we have a policy of terminating them. Like, great. Thanks. So I wasn't fired with cause, but it's the first time in my life ever I technically lost a job. I'd never been fired, never been laid off, nothing. Ever. So that was very traumatic for me. And I need to get into that later on, actually, in another podcast. Yeah, there's something coming up here. I really want to get into that a little bit more because as I've sat back and had the time to analyze that and how it's impacted me, it it's a real eye opener. So look for that. There's a lot about that I actually do want to share, and I want to kind of work out where to go from there, knowing now that what I know and what I'll share. So um, that's around the corner, but that's not what we're talking about here. Basically, my body forced it. I went back to my cardiologist I asked him to extend the disability so I wouldn't be unemployed, and he did. And he said, I think you need hospice care, to be honest. And I said, if you think that's best, that's that's fine. I trust you. And so I was then placed into home hospice care in severe heart failure, and I looked like the Michelin man with some of the fluids I was retaining, which is crazy. I was always a thin guy. My whole life I was that thin kid who never gained weight. Seriously. I was diagnosed once with being underweight. And I've even once had a doctor telling me to eat more red meat. And I'm like a carnivore already, so okay. Because he said I was a little anemic. I'm like, well, I don't understand. I had a steak 3 times this week. Anyway, um, yeah, I'm one of those skinny people that everyone else uh, deservedly hates. I admit that. So yes, I take that punishment as I deserve it. But anyway, I was retaining so much fluid. I had looked like I wasn't thin anymore. I was puffing out everywhere I could. It was awful and insanely painful. So painful. It's actually gotten a lot better, way better as time has gone on, thankfully. They've got a really good mix of diuretics now that my body really digs. Um, because I once was up to 195 pounds, which was an all time record for me in my life. And my last weight measurement, though, now. So I'm sorry, that was back basically when I started in hospice, somewhere around there, I guess. Maybe 2 months later, something like that, where I was just, gosh, putting on all this water weight. And somehow I got just the right mix to get that stuff out of me. And then it just was like an avalanche of water dumping out of my body every day. It was insane. You know, 4 liters out by noon. I mean, it was. Anyway, I dropped then from 195 down to today, I'm weighing around 158. So I'm about back to where I weighed in high school senior year. So that's pretty good. That's one thing that I don't complain about. But golly, if I stop taking my diuretics, whoosh, I feel it right away. I feel the edema immediately, and it's not a good feeling. It goes straight to my lungs and to my feet and other areas where it's painful or it's making it hard to breathe. Oh, I can't skip a dose. If I skip one dose, I feel it instantly starting to build, and I can't stand it. I've gone to a 24-hour Walgreens to pick up my diuretic when I planned to pick it up the next day. And I told myself, just being off, missing one day is not going to kill me. Well, after tossing and rolling for 3 freaking hours because I was drowning in fluid, I finally transferred it to a 24-hour Walgreens and went there at like 3 a.m. to pick up the diuretics and took them right away because I knew I wasn't getting any sleep anyway and I need to get this fluid off, you know. So Uh, I learned that the hard way. As I already said, I liked learning things the hard way. Let's see what this does. Whoa, I want to do that again. Anyway, yeah. And then now it's gone into um, fourth grade. Is that what they call it? I'm sorry, stage four, whatever, of five. Five stages possible. Stage four kidney failure. Thanks to all those diuretics. They're very hard on the kidneys. And I'm also having trouble getting blood flow to a lot of organs in my body. And it's showing. Um, Periodically on my skin, even on my face, I'll have like these really weird. They may not look like anything, but if you touch it, it feels like eczema, really rough. Other times it might be like red skin. It looks like a red mark, and it also feels like like severe eczema, like really dry skin. I'm always fighting that now. And that's because my body can't get the appropriate nutrients, fluid, hydration, everything that it needs to get to my skin. Your skin is just another organ. It's your largest organ in the human body. So I can physically see the effects of my heart weakening, even though the diuretics are working. It's still getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Another example, my left leg below the knee, like the shin or the calf, if I touch it, I feel like I'm touching somebody else's leg. It's a very creepy feeling. It feels like it's mostly numb to me. And so I've got severe neuropathy that my nerves dying now. And well, they've been dying for a while. And it's just getting worse and worse. It's also now in my left foot and left toes. As you heard in the last episode, the first one of this season, the very last episode where I showed my poor hospice nurse that I could pull out my toenails without wincing at all. No pain at all. It just feels like I'm tearing cardboard. And she's like, all right, I've seen enough. I'm out of here. Poor lady. Anyway, so yeah, I'm losing feeling in extremities of my body. And there's been other side effects that are even worse, frankly. But I don't really want to get into some of them because it gets really personal. I mean, it does really upset me. It steals from me a major portion of my experience in life, as this whole event already has. I can't travel. I used to love to travel. I've been to by far the most states in the Union. Sorry, there's a crazy dog having a hissy fit in the background. I've traveled to East Asia, Australia, Europe several times, Eastern Europe. even Central Asia and China. So, I've been around. I love travel. And now I'm told that's something I can't do safely. I'm also a foodie. I love to eat, go out to eat, try new restaurants, try new themed restaurants with my friends. I have a very, very refined palate. I'm a foodie by nature, and I love that kind of experience. That's another one of my favorite things to do. I can't do that anymore because if I take one portable tank, it's going to run out on me in 30 to 40 minutes. Then what do I do? I mean, I can roll into a restaurant with a dozen tanks, I guess. Because to me, a proper meal, to experience a new restaurant or a new delicacy, it's a 4 hour event. I mean, that to me, that's what it is. It's not 20 minutes at Applebee's. Ugh. No, it's not that. It is a long event. Usually at least 3 hours, four tops, probably more on the top end. But yeah, it is a whole event. And with my oxygen flow that I require, I would die or otherwise not be able to get just the oxygen I need for such a long time. Try to order in as best as I can, but it's just not the same. So that's another thing I can't do. When I go through the list of what were previously some of my most favorite things in life, the vast majority of them are now completely unattainable. Ever again. And that is very hard. That is very hard. And it just gets today a little bit, as I said, worse and worse as various organs start to emulate the loss of the appropriate blood flow and hydration and whatever nutrients they need. And that's unfortunate. So there's where I'm at today. I think I think that covers it. I'm sure I skipped some stuff, but I think that'll do. New or not, I hope you did. Um, if not, I apologize and I promise to give you a 100% refund. So, that is guaranteed. Anyway, so that's sort of what I'm faced with today. I've been, though, in home hospice care now for like an all time, uh, what was it called? The Guinness Book of World Records? Isn't that a beer? Guinness beer? Is that right? Guinness Book? Whatever. I think I'm in an all time record of the longest time spent in hospice. It's been at least 5 going on a 6 years. So much for that first 6 months, eh? God. I uh, I talked to my cardiologist about that when I last saw him in May, and he said, honestly, I didn't tell you this, but I seriously would have given you 2 months at most, honestly, when I last saw you. It's like, really? He's like, yeah, you were bad. Wow. So that's why he's given up entirely on uh, prognosticating my future. And this is because I'm the first case of this in recorded human history. Uh, there was no one before me that where it was recorded. I'm sure there was someone before me, but there was nothing recorded before me, medically speaking, of someone born with these kinds of issues. It's just a congenital defect that is through no fault of anyone. And isn't that awful? I can't blame someone. The universe? I don't know. I mean, it's luck. It is just luck. You can't. No. I can't blame anyone. Oh, I wish I could. I wish I had a scapegoat. But hey, don't we all? But I thought it was good to give at least a quick rundown, sort of indexive summary of my overall reason as to why I started this podcast. Honestly, I originated it as a personal journal that my family and friends could hear long after I had gone. They could still hear my voice, they could still hear me laugh, they could still hear me talk about things. They could still hear me say that I love them. So that was the original intent. It's turned into, for me, truly a journal that goes into my condition, my feelings, I suppose, my challenges, and my potential ways of remedying those challenges. And truly speaking, going through this process of journaling, I'm just journaling in a different way. So you could journal this way. You can journal all you want on paper. And I decided, like I said, to do it this way just for that one reason alone. It was not meant for mass consumption, but that's what happened. You know, whatever. But it has taught me new ways to look at the universe, to look at life, to look at mortality and my own mortality, and really solidify a better understanding of myself, my inner self, to where deep down you're not happy. You start to experience true joy, where inside of you, absent anything external to your body, no matter what occurs to you or around you, you feel this central joy because you develop this real good self analysis and understanding. And it's brought me to that point. It's completely changed my views with respect to all those things I just mentioned: life, the universe, death, loss, love, and in a very good way, to where now I can absolutely say in total certainty that I am at complete peace with my death, whenever it may come and in whichever form it may come. And the joy of having lived will remain untouched. And I know nothing, nothing in heaven or on earth could change that fact. And that's real joy. And it brought me to that point. So, thank you all for listening in to my incessant babbling. It's you I really have to thank as listeners. Granted, I don't think about doing it for people per se, because I try to do this first and foremost for myself, and then my friends and family. But the ability for me to have a voice like this is by far the best thing anyone could give to me. And for that, I deeply thank you with the bottom of my heart. Because what I just said was absolutely true with respect to my views and the peace that I have. You couldn't buy that for any amount of money. It takes a lot of work, a lot of self-reflection. And I am so grateful I had the time to not only do it, but document it organically as it changed. Because if you go through the history of all these past podcasts, you'll see things change quite a bit. So, thank you for your kind attention. If you wish to support me further, you could, of course, go to the homepage for this podcast. I think it's still on Spotify. And you could select support this podcast, or even better, just go to patreon.com/. My dog will eat my face and support it that way. And in doing that, you I will absolutely give you direct access to me. I can talk to you, chat with you in person, and you also get a bunch of other visual content that should be buried somewhere for the betterment of all mankind. But instead, I poison your eyes with never again being unable to see pictures of my life. But yeah, there's pictures of my life and stuff in there. I don't upload a lot, but yeah, I need to get on that. Anyway, that's my little tit for tat. I hope to speak with you again soon, but for now, it is off Wiedersehen.